Our next thread of the day is titled Torn. My friend's child is a monster. She says, I'm in a friend group with 2 other women in my area who have children the same age as mine. They're very supportive friends. One in particular has been an incredible friend to me, particularly so as I am an introvert, who people fade away from easily as I'm not gregarious or require a lot of company. She's been at my house many nights when my husband has been overseas to help nurse my baby when I put my toddler down to sleep, dropped off meals when I had a newborn, etc. I really, really value her friendship. The one problem is her child is awful. I feel awful saying that as they are only 3 years old, but she's such a bully and really mean-spirited. Her child is extremely aggressive and violent, has always been, and not only pushes, pulls hair, slaps, and hits, snatches toys away, and will pull a child to the ground and smother them, she will also pick up an object and whack a kid over the head with it. Tonight, completely out of the blue as my son was sitting on the couch, she picked up the largest piece of the Grimm's rainbow toy, a sizable piece of solid wood, and hit my son in the face with it, 2 hands and a big swing. She'd been pushing him and throwing things all night, but that was the worst of it. It was the most horrible thing to see, and I actually feel a bit traumatized by it. This girl usually targets our other friend's daughter and leaves my son alone. It really disturbs me. My friend is pretty embarrassed by it, but I would be mortified if my child behaved this way. I'm really rethinking my friendship with this woman. I can't see my son attacked like this again. I don't know how to act when it happens too, because I really feel for my friend, but I just can't stand this girl. I understand she might be just feeling some kind of way to behave like that, and I also feel for the kid, but I must protect my baby. She's very advanced in her speech and her mother is a psychologist. What would you do to handle this? Should I distance myself? I feel that this is one of those situations where all of the adults in that kid's life are letting her down, especially her mum, like 100% her mum, but also everyone else who watches her bully and beat and hit all the kids around her and doesn't do anything to stop her. She is clearly not getting any kind of discipline. She doesn't seem to get any kind of response from her mum. At least that's my assumption just from reading the thread, but we'll read a little bit further and see what OP has to say about this. And that's a fundamental problem. What I find really strange about OP's response here is she says, hey, the girl usually targets our other friend's daughter and she leaves my son alone. It really disturbs me. And so this has been happening for quite some time. They've been hanging out with this girl for quite some time. And it seems to me like OP was kind of happy to just watch it, like was a little bit disturbed by it, but not enough to actually act or step in or do anything about it, so long as the person being bullied was someone else's child. And then obviously the moment it's turned to her child, she's suddenly like, oh no, this isn't going to fly anymore. I can't watch this happening. That is not a great way to model good behavior as a parent. And I would hope that I could teach my kids that if they see anyone else being picked on by anyone else, that they can step in. That it's not only about your child, but it's also about having enough compassion and understanding for the other kids that are in the room to step in if you see them being picked on by someone. That said, the solution here is quite simple. You have to talk to your friend about the problem, right? And that doesn't mean you have to go to your friend and say, hey, your kid is kind of a bully and I don't like spending time with her and I don't want her around my child. But if it requires you to go that far, to be really clear and open and direct with your friend is 100% better than just quietly cutting off contact, not replying to her texts anymore, blowing her off and ghosting her if she asks to hang out. Like, you don't need to behave in that kind of way to your friend, especially a friend that's helped you out so much, that's really been one of those close people to you. Then it's only fair to sit down and say, look, I really love spending time with you. I would like to spend time with your kid as well, but the way that your kid behaves is too much for me and I don't want my child to be influenced by that. So if we aren't able to figure out a solution to your kid's behavior, then I'm afraid I can't have them hanging out. And that's completely fine. It is 100% your right to decide how to parent your child. And it is also your duty and your obligation as a parent to protect your child if you can. And this is one of those situations where clearly the people to blame are all the adults who are watching this happen without doing anything about it. I love the statement. She's very advanced in her speech, the kid, and her mother is a psychologist. Like, it should be clear that her mother should have better tools to be able to handle the situation, and that the child is not dumb. So you can maybe even sit down and have a conversation with her about hitting and violence and aggression, and why it's not okay when you're trying to play with other people, and how no one will want to play with her in the future if she continues behaving this way. Because kids just try things out and they test all boundaries that are offered to them, and you as a parent are you're the person that has to discipline that, or you as the adult in the situation. Not that I'm saying discipline your friend's kid, but you have to at least kick your friend into doing it if you need to. The first couple of responses say, as awful as it is, I'd probably distance myself from them purely because I don't think I could control myself if my daughter was being picked on. Your friend has to take responsibility because she's the mother. What happens if her daughter does something that lands your son in hospital? How does your friend react after she's done something? And then OP says, she usually either picks up the hurt child and consoles them if she's closer than the parent, or picks up her daughter, scolds her, and removes her from the room. And so it's clear that the mum is trying to respond to the situation in some kind of way. She may just be overwhelmed by her child's behavior, and maybe she just doesn't have any idea about how to fix it. But even then, I would still talk to her about it, and I would still make it clear that you don't want to have it around your child. And then it's her responsibility to try and find solutions for it. And I don't know how many parenting books or things like that you read, but if you read parenting books and you've come across something that might be helpful to her, you can suggest that. You can obviously try and help her out in terms of getting contacts with other child psychologists, other people who are a little bit more experienced and can help her out in terms of controlling her behavior. But that is going above and beyond as a friend that's trying to help your friend out who's struggling with a problem. I wouldn't do that unsolicited. I would only do that over the course of a conversation. If it seems to me like you go up to her and you're like, hey, how's it going with your kid? And why is she so angry all the time? And what's happening with this aggression? Is she like this at home as well? Just maybe approach that conversation with a little bit of curiosity and open-mindedness and see what your friend says, because it's very possible that your friend is like, oh my God, it's been so hard to handle it, and I've been trying really hard, and it's such a mess, and we've worked on this and worked on that, and it's not working out. And then at least you can still be there for your friend without necessarily taking back the boundary that you set in terms of how that child interacts with your kid. So you do not have to give up on your relationship with your friend just because you don't want your kids to play together. You can do both at the same time. The next person says, when I got to the point of the mum being a psychologist, my heart kind of sank because she has access to all kinds of tools and resources many people wouldn't have. On the other hand, maybe this makes her less likely to seek out advice. I would just straight up talk with her and say how you're really concerned after her kid hit yours like that, and you feel really awkward saying anything, but you're noticing it's a problem. Maybe offer to help her with a plan to help. She'll either try some new stuff with you or she won't, but at least you tried. Exactly. I think it's really mean to just kind of completely give up on the friendship, especially if it's a friend that means a lot to you. Then it's not fair to punish her in that kind of way. I like this comment because this person actually has some phrasing suggestions. And so she says, I think if I were in her shoes, I'd appreciate someone being honest with me instead of just ghosting me after I'd been there for them. Exactly. At the next play date, or perhaps after, I'd say something like, hey, I'm starting to get very concerned about your kid's anger and aggressiveness towards my baby. I love you and your kiddo so much, but I think it's best if we pause play dates and see if this phase of hitting and picking on others wears off. I just don't want my little one to get hurt, and I also don't want them thinking that this behavior is okay. I'd still really like to remain friends, and I hope my honesty is not offensive to you. Let me know if I can help in any way when it comes to helping her work through her anger and aggression. And that's a pretty nice way of phrasing it. I would probably skip one part of this, which is, I hope my honesty is not offensive to you. I think that this level, like, honestly, if your friend is offended, then you're not very good friends. Because if you can't talk about things like this openly and honestly with your friends, then you're not on the same page, and that's not a good friendship. So I would probably skip that line, but that's just me. Otherwise, the rest of this is really sweet and really nice. And so the advice that this person got was really great from the forum. In general, when you are friends with people, I think I would always try to approach that relationship with a level of honesty and directness and care, you know, that this person understands that it's not because you have a problem with her, or, you know, you do have a problem with her kid, but it's a behavioral thing. And it's definitely the case that kids do grow out of this if it's a phase, and if it's not caused by any of the people in her life or reinforced by any of the people in her life, then it's very likely that she'll calm down. But it's definitely 100% the mother's responsibility to step in and stop it. And if it's happening really often, then that's not cool. And also, if you see a kid picking on another kid repeatedly and it's not your kid, so you don't care, that's not a good way of dealing with that situation either.